Adwoa Aboah in conversation with founder of SBTV, Jamal Edwards.
Hello everyone, morning. Morning. Thank you, GQ, for having me. Thank you, Jamal, for coming and speaking to me.
No worries.
So we've got quite a few things that we want to talk about today. But first, I just want to have a general introduction about what you do, your journey, and then we'll go from there.
So I started an online music platform when I was about 15 years old. The main reason I started it is because I felt the artist that I wanted to film wasn't being represented on mainstream media. So I was running around filming, uploading onto YouTube, and then years later, it sort of blew up a little bit. I was able to got hundreds of millions of views, started featuring artists and giving them an early platform like Ed Sheeran, Rita Ora, Dave, Emily Sunday, and then the platform was known as a sort of A&R platform for up-and-coming artists. And then years later, I managed to get an MBE, which then, for my services to music, which then opened up the doors completely to another audience. And then it was just trying to feature artists on the platform before mainstream media, basically. And then recently, I've started getting involved in mental health because I felt like out of the circle that I'm in, I feel like I'm in the limelight quite a lot. And I feel like the artists talk about it a little bit, but I want to try and provoke that conversation a little bit more.
Because we spoke about that last night in terms of kind of responsibility, and that was, to be honest, one of the biggest driving forces for Girls Talk and my online platform, and realizing that, you know, the fashion industry has given me such a massive platform, and it's my complete responsibility to use that platform to enrich other people's lives and to advocate a deeper meaning and message. Was one of the driving forces behind SBTV about creating a larger community, about creating your own community? Was that something you were lacking?
Yeah, and
when growing up?
I feel like hope is a big thing with young people. It's like me being able to connect to people that I relate to give me that inspiration to carry on what I'm doing. It's like when I was very humbled to run like the first social media hub in Buckingham Palace. When I got the email, I was like, no way, what is this? But to my friends, they're like, wow, you've come from this and you've gone to that. And I feel like that was a big thing that I was trying to instill hope in people and show them that it doesn't matter what background you're from, you can make it against whatever it is that you're doing.
And you're also now doing youth centres,
Yeah.
For young men, and that's something that's kind of spurred on from your interest and advocacy within mental health.
Yeah, because I feel like same way that you use fashion as your entry point, music was my entry point. And for the next 5 years, I'm trying to set up like places for young kids to come to try and realize their potential. Because I fortunately realized my potential when I was about 15, but some people don't realize it a little bit later. And I'm just trying to push them a little bit, try and unlock that hidden potential. So I'm trying to set up in my area first. I've got 2 good partners on board at the moment, but it's like even setting that up, I've been doing that for like the past year. I haven't told anyone about it, because if I tell people about it, everyone's going to be expecting it, and it's like that's then an added pressure. So I've just been working behind the scenes trying to get it all set up.
Who spurred your hidden potential? Where did that come from? Because 15's young. I mean, I didn't find mine until like years of like messing around.
I feel like I tried out a lot of things, but I feel like there was a gap in the market at that time, and it was a little bit of my parents and a little bit of my friends that sort of spurred it amongst me. Like, so I remember my nan, she's got a knitting business. She's like, I think 70 or 80, but she found out her passion there. She's like, oh my God, she's got a newfound energy. So it doesn't matter what age you were, but I was very fortunate to find out at 15. But I think the kids just need to try out different things to be able to try out.
And like social media, so obviously you started with YouTube, but then quickly did Instagram become your like kind of main means of kind of like getting your message out and creating a bigger community? Has it? Because, you know, obviously, I mean, Instagram has helped Girls Talk so much, but it also is a negative amongst my community as well, in terms of how they feel about themselves, the added pressure that it adds, the feelings of not feeling good enough, etc., etc., etc.
I think it does have aspects of that, but I always try and push a real message, because when I'm having a bad day, I say I'm having a bad day, and I get loads of messages like, "Oh my God, you're having a bad day as well," and I'm like, "Yeah, we have bad days. Everyone has bad days," and I feel like that I can't portray on YouTube as much, because Instagram's quite quick. Like, I can put stuff up, and I feel like that it has its pros and its cons. But for me, it's allowed me to connect to my audience much more, and people that I don't know, like they send me messages as well. So I find like it's a good medium to talk to the audience, definitely.
And I just want to now talk a little bit about mental health within the realms of men. And it's something, since I started Girls Talk, I was always asked, what about boys? What about men? What about boys? What about men? And it was definitely something that, it's not like I really have never wanted to leave men behind in the conversation of mental health. And it was only the other day that I was speaking on a panel with Annie Lennox, and she mentioned this word, global feminism. And I thought that was really interesting in terms of us all moving in the same direction, and then us, all the sexes, being part of the same conversation. And now more than ever, I feel that in order for everything I'm doing with Girls Talk to reach like new heights, men have to be even more included in the conversation. So I just want to talk a little bit about male mental health. I have a little story. It was only the other day that I was sitting at the Met Ball, and I was sat next to a very high-powered businessman. And
Who?
No. And we were just chatting away, and I was quite happy to be sat next to a non-fashion person. I was like, okay, what's he doing with his life, blah, blah, blah. And he was asking me what I did, and I was mentioning about Girls Talk, and I was talking to him about all sorts of things to do with mental health and addiction and all the subjects that we try and destigmatize within Girls Talk. And he said, I've always found that women are far more unhappy than men. And I said, why do you say that? Like, where did that? I was just interested in where this kind of like fact had come from.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe that's just because men don't talk about it as much. And then I quickly kind of listed off a few statistics, which are that, the single biggest killer of men under 45 is suicide in the UK, that 84% of men say they bottle up their emotions, and personally, that suicide had been not only part of my personal life, but part of many of the men's life in my life. It was only the other day that I got a call from my friend saying that my 20-year-old friend had hung himself, and we had absolutely no idea. So I just found it so interesting that this man, with so much confidence, said that women seemed far more unhappy than men. And I just want to talk a little bit about that toxic masculinity, why it is that 84% of men see that, this is something. You're obviously an ambassador of calm, and these are their statistics that say that they bottle up their emotions, that they keep them inside.
Yeah, I feel like so for like the past 10 years, I've been doing everything in music, and I feel like more recently, like I had like two friends in the space of 3 weeks hang themselves, and that's what got me involved, because like my friends in my area were just like, we don't know what's going on. We don't understand.
Young black men.
One was white and one was black, and that prompted me. That's when I did my first film. That's when I did my first film around mental health in men, and I just learned a lot from it. Of like, guys don't talk to each other. Same with like my little sister. They'll be with a group of them, and they'll be like, oh, like I've done this, I've done that. They have that conversation, but I don't feel guys. I think it's getting better, especially amongst my group or circle of friends. But in the wider picture, that's why I always try and create exposure around it and talk about it, to like break that sort of stigma and taboo, because it is definitely something that is there.
And what do you think I've always thought that it wouldn't, with our Girls Talk events, hundreds of us sit in a room like this, and we put our hands up, and beautifully women start sharing their stories without any sort of prompt. But I've always thought that this might not necessarily work with men at this point. What do you think that are the first steps in kind of driving that conversation and kind of spreading that awareness around not only suicide prevention, but also anxiety and all the things in between?
I think one of the biggest things is like removing that fear of judgment. It's like if someone tells you something, it's like they're like not being judged. And I've always been sort of free spirit in terms of like, come speak to me. Like, and I always push that message out on my Insta. And I feel like I get a lot of people that I don't even know messaging me saying, I've gone through this problem. Like, and I obviously can recommend them to calm, or I can, if I've been through something, I can sort of talk to them about it. But I feel that is the big step that I feel men need to get over, is like being feared of being judged for whatever it is that you're talking about. And it's getting better. Like I can talk from a personal experience. Like when you grow up, I grew up on an estate. It's like you've got these figures which are these macho men, and that's how you be a man. And I feel like that's what has been instilled in a lot of kids from young. And it's like removing that, like, of what, like, and that's why, what is a hero? It's like, for me, a hero could be someone that gets out of bed in the morning and has had difficulty getting out of bed previously. It could be someone that is helping their nan on the way to the shop, and it's like redefining what a man and a hero is. And that's the message that I'm always trying to do and try and change it about.
Who are your heroes?
I think definitely my mum. My mum is definitely one of my heroes. I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but she's been through so much in terms of like raising me, and her family past and all that. I guess, and also I always try and tell my friends they're my heroes as well. I feel like you need to tell your friends if you're doing everyday stuff. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're not on TV or you're not doing music. It's like, if you're doing something in your community and it's making the change, I feel like that's your hero as well. And I always try and make sure I push that message up, definitely.
And do you think that kind of, the idea that was instilled in you to kind of talk openly, did that come from your mum?
No, I think that came through, that actually came through me working at Top Man. You had to go to people and talk to people that you didn't know and ask them for store cards. It was the most frightening thing ever. And that, like, I got over that. And I think, like, when I was like 15, I was quite a closed shell. I never used to talk to anyone. But that was a big, and yeah, big up Top Man, that was a big part. I was working there for 4 years, like, doing that. And it was just the most frightening thing, but it opened me up. And I feel like those life skills I didn't really get in school. And I feel like it's quite important that kids get these sort of things, this education in schools. When I go in schools, I'm always talking, like, have conversations with people. And I've always thought in my head, like, if I was just gonna speak to random people out there, it's like there was a person that I was actually coming outside Soho House, and he had a book like this, and he had to talk to 10 people, get their details, find out what they did. And I just found it amazing. And it was basically, he was trying to come over his anxiety. And he was saying, and one thing I didn't like is people just walking past and not giving him the time of day. I gave him the time of day and I found out, and I was his last person. He's like, thank you so much. And it's like, these challenges that people are giving to themselves, I've always tried to film it or create exposure around it and put it on my platform to sort of inspire other people to do it. And I feel like when more people having a conversation, it helps, definitely.
And in schools, are you finding what are the kind of questions you're being asked when because you know the kind of long-term game for girls talkers is to always end up in schools. Like that's, you know, where I know I always needed something, and where I know that when I was growing up I was lacking a space where I was able to talk about all these things that just naturally come into your life, or sometimes don't necessarily naturally come into your life and just kind of thrown on you. What are kind of some of the questions that you're being asked when you go into the schools? I know you told me last night that you've been also asked to go into Brixton Prison as well.
Yeah, I think it's the relatability that people have with similar sort of people. I feel like that's the biggest thing. I think when I'm going into schools, when I went into college the other day, they was just showing someone that is alumni and that has been there and showing that you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that I keep talking about, hope. Like, hope is such a big thing. And I feel like that's what, like, when you're creating, when you're starting new platforms, it's like having that hope. It's like similar to you when you started Girls Talk. What was the hope of, like, did you look to anything else that you could say, oh yeah, I can do that? Or was it like something that you just thought like you needed to create the conversation between people, like between girls especially?
I think I just knew, I kind of stole the whole kind of medium from like going to kind of my own recovery in the rooms of AA and NA, and it kind of, and being in and out of like treatment centers. I just knew it was really needed. And what's beautiful now about kind of, now we've been doing events all over the world, and we recently did one in Ghana, and what was so brilliant was to know that I really, for the first time, knew without a doubt how much girls' talk is needed all over the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm needed all over the world. And what I mean by that is that there are culturally things that I will never understand. There are culturally things that I am lucky to not understand, and situations that I have never been put in. We were in Ghana, and one of the biggest kind of problems there is women being sexually abused within schools, families, and universities. And it was so easy for people to go up and be like, just self-worth, respect yourself. But actually, I mean, when you've got a family at home and the pressure of getting through university and the pressure of getting a job at the end of it, and the pressure of being one of the only females in your class, that self-respect comes, although, that is something very hard to work towards. And it was just very interesting doing Ghana and realizing how important it is. I want to talk about like just passing the torch. It's so important, and it's something I'm doing with the podcast as well. It's just giving the platform. It doesn't always have to be. What's beautiful is when the conversation gets bigger, when other people are able to share their stories, what they're going through. And that's something you've always done with SBTV, and something you're always doing now in terms of the poets you have on there, in terms of the musicians. What is it that kind of excites you about kind of passing that torch and giving other people the opportunity to spread their message?
I think giving like people like careers and like life. And I feel like that's I think when someone messaged me and was like, I've just got signed off the back of your video, I just felt such a buzz off the back of it. And like now I feel like as we've got older, it's like I saw one of the talks here yesterday, I think it was with Anne, and it was like the legacy. It's like, what is the legacy? So I seriously started thinking about what was my legacy going to be. And I wanted to put it into like youth centers and youth work. Still doing the music, but like same way you do in fashion, that's the entry point, and it's allowed me to go into another world. So I feel like, yeah, it's definitely something that I'm trying to keep.
What do you want your legacy to be? Someone asked me that yesterday, and I'd never really been asked that.
I don't know. I think self-belief and trying to like there's big companies at the moment that are going to areas and setting up massive things and taking in a lot of kids just for the quota number. And I'm trying to connect with every kid. I've got 45 kids on the estate at the moment, and I'm sitting down with each one and I'm asking them, what do you want to do? All right, do you want to get into cooking? Do you want to get into football? I'll go and connect it to the right person. And it's like giving them the opportunities. I'm very fortunate to be in my position and made a lot of contacts over the years where I can connect the two dots. So I've got some kids into apprenticeships, I've got some kids into work, and it's just like keep on building that, but really hyper-local. So it's not getting like hundreds of kids. It's like focusing on a certain group and building from that. And I feel like that's when you start connecting with them on a personal level.
Yeah. And, God, there's so many other things I want to ask. Yeah, we're all right. What else? So, in terms of, legacy, someone asked me, I was listening to Michelle Obama speak last year, and she said that what doesn't stop her is the idea that she might not be around to see everything, all the changes that she makes. And I thought that was so beautiful, because sometimes there's so much pressure for like the continuity and to keep on moving and the momentum of your message and the movement that you're on and the kind of journey that you're on. But it's not always. Sometimes I feel, there's so much to be done.
Planting seeds.
Yeah.
Like, and what did you say your legacy was to the person asked you yesterday?
I don't know. I'm still thinking
Is
about it.
So
Really.
like, I feel like we're both planting seeds, and I think I had a conversation, quite interesting conversation on the table yesterday, was that if you look at boxing, for example, and you've got Anthony Joshua, you have Lennox Lewis, you have Mike Tyson, you have all these boxers before, which I feel like they planted the seeds to get where Anthony Joshua is now, and he's learned from all those boxers, and that's like the defined boxer. Everyone loves him, lovable person, like he's winning his fights. And I find that's in the same with music, it's in the same with fashion. It's like all these seeds that have been planted before, and then we're the ones that are sort of growing the roots. And it's like we might not see the end of where the actual fruit comes in the tree, but we'll still be in the process of inspiring the next generation. And I've always said, like, when we was talking about like the young people of today, the future leaders of tomorrow, it's like we want to try and carry on doing that. Like, we're doing our part now, but I know there's going to be a next 15, 14-year-old, because the kids younger, the younger kids these days are more switched on and clued up and connected, like, more than ever. So it's like, yeah.
Do you find that with your male community? Are they complete? Like, I'm overwhelmed by like how switched on my community
Yeah,
is.
it's nuts.
Like, they're compared to how I was at that age. I was literally like kind of definitely not thinking about anything like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean, you
feel-
definitely were at 15, but
Nah.
you're like an enigma. But what are your kind of community? And I always, you know, Girls Talk is about to embark on a new project around male mental health and suicide prevention. And what really, you know, I'm so interested to know, like, who is it that the young men are looking up to today? Is it musicians? Is it, you know,
I think it's anyone
sports
that's
stars?
overcome whatever scenario they're in to get where it is that they are. And it doesn't matter what area it is. I feel like people just love a go-getter and a hustler. And I feel that is more happening now. And everyone always says generation whatever. I feel like it's generation DIY. It's like generation do it yourself. And it's like that is more stories that come out and more people that you're doing Girls Talk, I do SBTV. It's like more young people and people that even of old generation are able to connect. And I feel like that is a conversation that needs more exposure. So like even doing this event, for example, is creating more exposure for what is a hero, like different people. So I feel like it's just going to carry on and keep on getting bigger, hopefully.
I love that generation do it yourself. I was doing this leadership lab at the UN, and I thought this woman came up here, and she was one of the like top women at the UN, and she, you know, she was like, part of me really wants to say like, join the UN and help us, but actually, really, I just want you to all continue. You know, there was about 20 of us women, and we were all doing different kind of like grassroots kind of projects, and she was like, but really, I really want you to continue doing what you're doing and the smaller things, and kind of, because you do, it's like you said, you know, you've got these big organizations going in, but they're talking to hundreds of people, you're talking to 45 particular men, and really kind of, and we spoke about that yesterday in terms of like social media and the community, that you're creating not necessarily like quality over quantity.
Yeah, less is more, definitely. I feel if you're able to connect with people much more on a deeper personal level, they're going to respect it and be much more reactive to actually helping and making a change. I feel like that's like, and I've learned, I've made mistakes where I've gone in big, like trying to do everything massive, talk about it, set up the whole PR, and it's like everyone's waiting, and it's like you ain't got no results to show. So like I'm doing everything backwards now. I've learned, I'm gonna do all of it. I've got like the Wellcome Trust doing all the mental health research. I've got like YouTube Music on board, and I'm gonna do all the work first, and then I'm gonna talk about it, because I feel like that has much more of a better way of doing it.
And so, just back to this, my lovely businessman who I had the pleasure of sitting next to.
Who is it?
I'll tell you later. He then ended it, when I told him about my dear friend, he said that, how come you had no idea? Are you sure you had no idea? And I was like, yeah, I had no idea. I knew that he was taking loads of drugs, but I had no idea that it got to a point, and you know, and as you know, that in 2014, I also tried to take my own life, and no one around me had any idea. I had put on so many different masks that it was very hard for anyone to kind of get underneath that. But why I go back to that is because I want to, what is it that we need, what questions do we need to be asked? What is it that, I mean, it's quite like, I don't think we both know the answer to this, but I'm just wondering what the next steps are in terms of bringing this conversation to light and kind of pushing it in the right direction. Where does the support need to be coming from? Does it need to be coming from other men? Does there need to be more education, in schools around mental health?
You pretty much said a couple of the answers. I think it's definitely two of those points that you raised is so important. But I also think it's just connecting. It's like connecting. It's like when I came down to your event, the one with Revlon, the Girls Talk, I think I was like, me and my mate was probably the only guys in there. But I was just like, I was filming it, and I had men messaging me, what event is this? I want to come in, because it was quite interesting what you was talking about. And I feel the connection is so important, and creating exposure and having a conversation. I feel like if you keep on having a conversation, the way that we're having a conversation now, like 5 years ago, these conversations wasn't happening. And I feel like that will help. Fingers crossed it will help. But it's, creating exposure around these different issues and connecting with your friends as well. I feel like that's quite important. And when you're young, I think when I was a little bit younger, I had so many friends, but now it's like I've got a good social circle, and I feel like that's quite an important of realizing who's actually there for you and can help you.
And do you think, I've always talked very kind of strongly about confidentiality, and, that's something we really advocate within Girls Talk, because there needs to be a feeling of trust so that people open up. Do you think it would work in the same way for a space where men could kind of talk about?
100%.
I mean, what about some of you guys? What do you think, where do you think you're lacking spaces and in which you could feel like you could talk about what's going on in your life? Men. I love that. Not one. I love all my women shaking their head, and then these two. But other than that, I saw no man in here shaking their head or nodding. But that's another question. Maybe I'll ask later.
Yeah.
So positive. Call to action. What do we want everyone here to walk away with? What should I walk away with? What are you going to walk away with in terms of the next steps? And also, what do you wish your younger self and anyone following in the path behind you, all the young men that you had the pleasure of talking to, what would you like them to know?
I think in terms of business, I always say VAT and tax and learn about your finances.
Yes, it's so important. Praise Jamil, my manager, who has taught me so much about taxes.
I feel like that could add another layer of stress to you that you don't really need.
No, we're doing Girls Talk.
Finance.
No, it's not finance. Imagine how boring that would be. It's like, it's Girls Talk, kind of like lifestyle. I can't remember what we've named it, but it's like life skills, exactly. And we're just doing like kind of all the different, how to live your best life in a mature way.
Yeah, I feel like that in terms of the business, I always say that it's so important. But if I was to tell my younger self, I think it would be, don't be worried about what other people think. And it's like when I first started SBTV, people were like, "Oh, you weren't going to do it." Like in school, there was like, "There's a certain way of how you can't be an entrepreneur. You're going to do this." And I let that affect me so much and what my friends thought. And it's like it affected me so much when I was younger. And like when I see I'm older now, I tell other young kids, if you want to do that, do it, and I'll support you because I'm the cool one. So when I'm saying, "Oh yeah, that's fine," it gives them the like, "Oh, Jamal said it's fine, so it's fine." But it's like I didn't have that person for me when I was younger. So I feel like if I was younger, I'd be like, just have a headstrong. And I was like 15, so I don't know how strong your head can be when you're that age. But I feel like now that you need to make sure that you're being open, and I think that's what I definitely tell my younger self 100%, is like I'd make sure it'd be open.
Yeah, well, I think that's a beautiful way to end it, be open. So thank you so much to all of you for coming, and thank you, Dylan Jones, for giving me the space and putting me on your cover, and thank you for Jamal for being my hero and for coming today.